What's that? Oh, yeah. Sure. Oh, sure.
Let's see. Yeah, I think that's gonna work right there. Tweak with it. We'll just try a song. I turned on my TV, though it was hard to see these men who would be head of state. What a great country, from sea to shining sea, we watched the Republicans debate. Newt stood with his third wife and said, "You bet your life the president is a red. He wants to tax the rich a lot, take your limo and your yacht. He wants to have the bankers' heads. And if he gets in again, he'll paint the White House pink, and then he'll hire Chavez as his VP. Then we'll be right on track to give capitalism the sack, along with the insurance industry. If only it were true, if only it were true, I'd be so happy, wouldn't you? If only it were true, if only it were true, if only it were true." Yeah, they're all sing-alongs. Of course, that depends on knowing the song first. That's a sing-along is a song you know, so they may or may not be sing-alongs, but in theory. He'll give everyone food stamps and wheelchair ramps. He'll subsidize windmills and maple syrup. He'll cripple industries with eco-friendly policies, and pretty soon we will be just like Europe. He'll shut down oil wells, give out solar cells to every home in Delaware and Illinois. He'll ban logging in the parks. He'll send the works of Karl Marx to the homes of every American girl and boy. He'll abolish pesticides. He'll be giving out free rides and free lunches too in his high-speed trains. He'll start lots of public works full of union perks. He'll fill all the cities up with bicycle lanes. If only it were true, if only it were true, I'd be so happy, wouldn't you? If only it were true, if only it were true, if only it were true. Watch out, his critics tell, this shall be our death knell. He'll pull the troops out and end all of our wars. He'll gut military spending, our empire will be ending, and soon we'll be invaded by the Moors. He'll legalize all drugs, give away beer mugs and hookahs to every child, and Korans. He'll ban religions from the schools, give 40 acres and a mule to every person who makes less than 50 grand. He'll close Guantanamo to torture, he'll say no. He'll make us all drive electric cars. He'll reinstate the fairness doctrine, take off that damn flag pin, and he'll put Rupert Murdoch behind bars. If only it were true, if only it were true, I'd be so happy, wouldn't you? If only it were true, if only it were true, if only it were true. If only it were true, if only it were true, I'd be so happy, wouldn't you? If only it were true, if only it were true, if only it were true. Does it sound okay out there?
Yes.
Yeah. Good. I am a fisherman, so were my parents. Here in Cordova, on Prince William Sound, I'm not a tree hugger, but I love the mountains. And hauling in the gill net with the ocean all around. Life was good here. You could raise a family with 100,000 tons of herring sent out every year. 1989, the tanker grounded. Nothing's ever been the same around here. then it would be cleaned up. But our beaches were still covered, as was the ocean floor. 4 years passed, each run collapsed. It was then we knew for sure the herring weren't coming back. Exxon's promises of compensation were about as empty as a used up paper sack. It was August 20th, 1993, when we fishermen decided something must be done. We packed some groceries, we made some banners, headed out to Valdez Narrows beneath the midnight sun. 100 vessels took to the water, pushed through a storm and to the Valdez Sea. We lined up our boats, formed a blockade, and we waited for whatever might be. Approaching. It was a sight to see there in the twilight of the day. We saw it turning. We all cheered and cried as tanker after tanker after tanker turned away. A Coast Guard gunship from Seattle would take 3 days to get up to the sound. We held the line till then we went back to Cordova, to this hallowed, oiled ground. I am a fisherman, so were my parents, here in Cordova on Prince William Sound. Lovely to be back in Gainesville. I think it's been a year since I was here last time. It all blends together. Visit his father out of town, where he had moved to an upscale neighborhood. It rains a lot in Florida, and it was raining on that night, but everyone says exercise is good. He went out for a walk to the convenience store to go out and bring some candy back. But some people leave and they never come home. That night it was a one-way track. For the neighborhood watchman was driving in his car on a rainy night, looking for a young man who might have a part to play in his personal race war. And what if this trolling vigilante, sowing terror on the racist whim, what if when he found this teenage boy, he instead had found a man more like him? What if things were different? Where would he be bound? What if Trayvon had stood his ground? When Zimmerman approached in an unmarked vehicle, when the high school student ran, what if instead he had stood there in the rain with his Skittles and his Arizona can? What if trying to avoid a conflict with this cracker who was evidently messed up in the head, Trayvon had said, I feel like my life's in danger, and he had shot this vigilante dead. What if things were different? Where would he be bound? What if Trayvon had stood his ground? Would this hooded youth be gingerly arrested, treated for his wounds and then let free? Would he be hailed as a hero by the NRA, by Limbaugh, Beck, and Hannity? Would he be found not guilty by any jury in this country? Would he be allowed to keep his gun? Or would he be sitting in a prison cell watching pundits on the TV saying, that kid really should have run? What if things were different? Where would he be bound? What if Trayvon had stood his ground? Been everywhere I go, they keep on having elections. It's one of the curses of the democratic world, and they're usually useless. There's occasional exceptions, but in Australia they were having an election the whole time. Most of the time I was there, and of course in Australia they have more than two parties, which sucks the left in, so all the left-wingers are out there campaigning for the Greens and the Socialists, who always lose. But and then they don't come to my gigs, which I think would be more useful actually. But it's good for entertainment value anyway, the elections. And so you had a politician in Queensland who said that she did not mind Islam as a country. And, she had to drop out after that one. And of course, we have, it's not an election, but we have the Toronto mayor to keep us entertained lately. And but I think probably the most entertainment value came out of New York. Anthony Weiner takes pictures of his wiener and sends them off to lots of women that he's never met. Normally I wouldn't care about some guy's pubic hair, except in this case it's a politician we can hopefully soon forget. He wants to make New Yorkers proud and show he's very well endowed to be the mayor of the city from which he sends his tweets. He's a good Democrat. He'll go up to bat for the people of New York and the random women that he greets. Anthony Weiner's wiener, these days it's all the rage. To find out more about his wiener, just take a peek at the front page. I probably wouldn't give a shit about his adolescent wit, whether he was sexting after he resigned from Congress or before. I may not like his style as he issues his denial, but what really bugs me is he voted for the war. Anthony Weiner's wiener, these days it's all the rage. To find out more about his wiener, just take a peek at the front page. Now that it's the second scandal, maybe we can pull the handle and send Anthony and his wiener down some flushing drain and await the politician next, who will send a penile text one vile politician down, but far too many still remain. Anthony Weiner's wiener, these days it's all the rage. To find out more about his wiener, just take a peek at the front page. So there's these, this wonderful tradition of plowshares actions. People taking sledgehammers onto military bases, and this there was another great little example of that in Queensland, Australia, which went to trial a few months ago, and as tends to happen outside of the United States, they allowed international law into the trial, and in this case, there have been several cases of people being found not guilty, and like for doing millions of dollars worth of damage to American warplanes in different places, and a CIA spy base in New Zealand. But in Australia, they were found guilty, but not very guilty, because they didn't get any jail time. And they have to pay back the damage to the helicopter, but only like $10 a month or something. So it'll take a long time, you know. They'll be paying that back for the rest of their lives. But. You know, you think of it as a symbolic action, but I was walking down a path one day at this little festival after singing this song the night before, and the guy stopped me and he said, you know, 10 million people with sledgehammers could just change everything, you know. And yeah, that is true. I watched it on the TV. Machine guns, fire towards the ground. I watched the people run. Helicopter gunship, strafing the street. I watched them lining up the bodies in the Baghdad heat. They say these leaks had consequences, and I must agree. When I saw them fire on the children, it affected me. I thought, what if I were wearing the other shoe? If I had a hammer, what would I do? I am just a person, like anyone. I am just another mother's son. I have no special powers. I cannot fly, not like that helicopter gunship up in the sky, sending all those bullets all around to the journalists and children on the ground. I am just one man, that's very true. But if I had a hammer, what would I do? Sometimes I try to wonder, why should I care? But then the answer seems so obvious. There are people down there. And right here in Queensland, there's an army base. And there's a helicopter gunship just sitting in place. There's a time for watching. There's a time to act. It's just gonna kill more children if it remains intact. I am just one person, but you are too. And if you had a hammer, what would you do? If you had a hammer, what would you do? So, economic crisis is not getting better for most people in most places. I mean, there's some little exceptions like Norway. Other, you know, if it's a really well-run social democracy that's loaded with oil, that helps. You know, Australia. And then there's Iceland. Contrast the countries that have taken the so-called bailout, like Greece, Portugal, the United States, with countries that didn't. Iceland is an island with 500,000 or so Vikings, mostly known for volcanoes, hot springs and fishing, known for its welfare state, known for being good and socialistic, certainly not known for being corrupt or nepotistic, but in the USA and Europe, when they were deregulating banks, Iceland's politicians took bribes and joined their ranks. Soon you had a situation one would think just couldn't be. A bank whose debt was worth 10 times the country's GDP. When Wall Street imploded, sure enough it spread. Banks all over the world were floating in the red. All over the world, governments made the plan to cut spending and raise taxes on the working woman and working man. The banks were bailed out while the people had to pay. But in Iceland people thought there must be a better way. And the earth stood still a moment. Fear was struck in every toff when Iceland told the bankers. Iceland told the bankers. Iceland told the bankers to fuck off. Folks were in the street in Reykjavik and just couldn't be ignored. They said this is a debt we Icelanders can't afford. Let's guarantee deposits of all our people, yes indeed. But as for all the speculators motivated by their greed to make really dumb investments, to them Iceland said good luck. Sorry for your losses, but we don't really give a fuck. The 1% all trembled when they took away the trough. When Iceland told the bankers, Iceland told the bankers, Iceland told the bankers to fuck off. The UK called them terrorists, said we cannot let this stand. Who do these peacenik blogs think they are in Iceland? They threatened isolation and economy in flames. But the Icelanders said sorry, but the banks can settle their own claims. Though that might be harder for them now that they're under house arrest. Or else they fled the country as they were most unwelcome guests. And now Reykjavik's recovery just makes the fat cat sputter and cough, since Iceland told the bankers. Iceland told the bankers. Iceland told the bankers to fuck off. If you haven't heard of this example, perhaps there's a reason why. The owners of the world don't want this kind of shit to fly. They say we all must pay up in this shakedown by the mob. If we can't afford to pay the rent because we don't have a job, they say it's not their problem. If we're forever shackled by their debt, we must save the 1% from the fate they should have met. But there is an alternative, though it makes the fat cat scoff. When Iceland told the bankers, Iceland told the bankers, Iceland told the bankers to fuck off. Iceland told the bankers, Iceland told the bankers, Iceland told the bankers to fuck off. So they're having their TPP negotiations, and TPP, it always reminds me of toilet paper, which seems appropriate, really. You know, these kinds of trade policies and stuff go way, way back, and well, I was just kind of thinking about that one day, and I thought, I'm going to write a song about that, and about one of the one of the initial attempts at successful from certain standpoint, like from the imperial perspective, it was a successful attempt to institute what they call free trade policies. And they did it pretty much in the traditional way, through wanton violence. Let me tell you a tale. Stir a hornet's nest, well remembered in the East, most forgotten in the West. It was the 1830s, and the Industrial Revolution was turning Europe into a land of wage slaves and air pollution. The history books tell us it was the era of free trade, and the entire world hungered for the products Europe made. Merchants plied their wares across the 7 seas, and they brought back things like porcelain, silk, and tea. Soon all the tea in China could barely keep the West awake. Such a thirst for Chinese products as could barely be slaked. They liked to drink their tea in cups of Chinese porcelain, and those who could afford it loved the silk upon their skin. But what made the merchants and the monarchs scream and shout? They seemed to have little to offer that China couldn't live without. They didn't want their muskets, and they didn't want their wool, which left the British coffers empty and the Chinese coffers full. And they called it a trade war. They called it a trade war, and I guess that could be so. They say it's not free trade if it's just a one-way flow, because apparently free trade is when the West comes out ahead. That's how it is in practice, though that's never what is said. The fact of history they'd have a sweep under the rug. The one thing they could sell in China was an addictive drug. It had long been banned by Chinese law, but the British didn't care. They packed the opium up in crates and they shipped it there. And they called it a trade war. It all came to a head in 1838 when the soldiers of the emperor torched 20,000 crates. It took 3 days to burn it, and when the fires had gone out, the Chinese people would soon learn what free trade was all about. Navies came from Britain, France, and the USA. In blood, land, and silver, they would make the Chinese pay. Cities leveled, thousands killed. The war was 3 years long. That's how they opened China. That's how they got Hong Kong. And they called it a trade war. And they called it a trade war. Well, I'll do a song, which bizarrely, just to add irony to the song, which is already somewhat ironic in the first place. It is now an advertisement, in that I have T-shirts, which just got onto my website today. Which just have the refrain of this song, in case you want to wear it around and impress your friends. I don't drive a car because they run on gas, but if I did, it'd run on biomass. I ride a bike, or sometimes a skateboard, so fuck off all you drivers and your yuppie hordes, sitting all day in the traffic queues. I'm a better anarchist than you. I don't eat meat, I just live on moldy chives, or the donuts that I found in last week's dumpster dives. Look at you people in that restaurant, I think they are so sad, when you could have been eating bagels like the ones that I just had. I think it is a shame, all the bourgeois things you do. I'm a better anarchist than you. I don't wear leather, and I like my clothes in black, and I made a really cool hammock from a moldy coffee sack. I like to hop on freight trains, I think that is so cool. It's so much funner doing this than being stuck in school. I can't believe you're wearing those brand new shiny shoes. I'm a better anarchist than you. I don't have no sequel, because heterosexual relationships are inherently unequal. I'll just keep on moshing to anti-flag and crass until there are no differences in gender, race, or class. All you brainwashed breeders, you just haven't got a clue. I'm a better anarchist than you. I don't believe in leaders, I think consensus is the key. I don't believe in stupid notions like representative democracy. Whether or not it works, I know it is the case that only direct action can save the human race. So when I see you in your voting booth, then I know it's true. I'm a better anarchist than you. I am not a pacifist, I like throwing bricks, and when the cops have caught me and I've taken a few licks, I always feel lucky if I get a bloody nose, because I feel so militant and everybody knows. By the time the riot is all through, I'm a better anarchist than you. I'm a better anarchist than you. Let's see. We need to do better than that. Some people have a lot in common, such as the thousands and thousands of captive men held in windowless cells, 23 hours a day, in the SHUs of Pelican Bay. Some of the smartest people you'll never meet, each and every day a life on repeat. Indefinite detention is the weight they carry, never told when they get out of solitary. Decades alone until they snitch, those are the rules, that's the pitch. Decades divided into different groups, a guaranteed life of repeated loops. Decades divided on different teams with Latin, Black, and Aryan themes. But those days are over, and it's been 5 weeks. Refusing food until the Reaper speaks. Now, they're not eating anymore. They're not eating anymore. Some of them are in there for reading the wrong news. Some of them are in there for having the wrong tattoos. In the outside world, they might not care. But there's no free speech in there. A life lived under arbitrary authority. No human contact, no dignity. It's no kind of life at all. So 20,000 prisoners answered the call and said, we're not eating anymore. We're not eating anymore. They say California's a progressive state. Governor Brown ain't he great? You got Silicon Valley and Hollywood stars 120,000 men behind bars. Hunger pangs stab like a knife, but sometimes so does life. Something's gotta change, maybe this is the start. If the people on the outside play our part. Because they're not eating anymore. They're not eating anymore. They're not eating anymore. They're not eating anymore. So I was in Australia not long ago and got to hang out with some of the folks at the Sea Shepherd Conservation Society, and I think they're a very impressive bunch of high thrill threshold types. And I just spent much of the weekend visiting my friend Marie Mason in prison in Fort Worth, Texas, where she's being held in a sort of a super max little prison within a prison. This little, the general population area is bad enough, but where she is held with there's 20 women in this prison within a prison, and it literally is a prison within a prison. You actually have to go through like all these extra gates and, well, you know, double steel doors. You get into this holding cell, and then you have 2 steel doors, and then they open up the other one, and it's all very, you know, crazy. And then they can only visit one at a time, and they're in this room with this jet guard, and everything's being filmed and recorded. And she's in there for destroying corporate property. Unfortunately, she did that in this country. It's a lot easier to do if you, like, in international waters. You know, there's people who sank whaling ships who never went to prison for it because, well, you're not breaking any laws, really, if it's international waters, I guess. Either that or the countries that those ships you're sinking don't want to try to take you to court somewhere because you're not there where they are, and wherever they might be taking you to court is in a country where whaling is illegal, so it might not go so well for them. But if I could have sung this song for Maria, I would have, and she would have liked it. But can't do that. You can't bring guitars in there, and you can't bring a notepad or a pen, and she can't give interviews, and she can't write essays. They let her art get out there. She can write, she can paint, but, you know, I think it's a little challenging to communicate that way, but. To Antarctica, so close but so far from Australia, where watchful eyes are always peeled, 'cause you never know when there's a growler below. Watchful eyes peeled for predators and prey, where all you can do is whatever you can to keep the hunt at bay. The time is coming, and it's coming soon, when we'll stand between you and that harpoon. The tide is unforgiving, the seafloor is a grave for those capsized before us, fell beneath the waves. Perhaps we'll join them by accident or not, a gale or a storm, well-placed shot. But we'll steer around the ice and right into their sights. Everyone must pick their battles. This is our fight. will stand between you and that harpoon. Between you and the harpoon, there's just a little space, but that's where we can see your face. Look into your eyes and hear you sing. You come to realize you have to do something. Sometimes all you could do is do your best and hope that someone else will do the rest. So once again we'll spend this afternoon standing between you and the harpoon. A break, and then I'll do it all over again with different songs, and there's CDs and email list over there if anybody is interested in such a thing. So I'm a big fan of history, and because it's so instructive and so interesting and useful, and there's so many good stories. And, you know, sort of growing up in the, I guess, I don't know, you could call it the new left, or I don't know, this sort of, like, I didn't really think about it or realize until just, like, maybe a year ago, reading about it, that the Homestead Act of 1862, which we all learned about in school, probably, was for the non-indigenous and non-enslaved portion of the population, was actually a really progressive thing, which changed the lives of a lot of people in a very, some people very negatively and others very positively. And basically, like, you know, if you grew up like most people in the English-speaking world watching Little House on the Prairie, that whole reality of the small farmers that's depicted in that show was a result of the Homestead Act. And also the most notable thing, I think, really is the part that you never hear about, which is that the Homestead Act never would have been passed if it had not been for the rent strike, which we never learned about in school. The patroons came from Holland to America, became landlords where none had been before. Soon one man owned 500,000 acres on both sides of the Hudson River shore. He invited families to move in and give him 30% of everything they grew every year. This is how they pay the rent. His name was Rensselaer. He became one of the richest men on earth. In today's terms, $90 billion is how much he'd be worth. All this for doing nothing but saying all of this was his. I have the power of the state behind me, and I'm in the landlord biz. After 200 years of this and one revolution won, another Rensselaer had another son. And this Rensselaer was greedier than his ancestors dead and past. It was the 1840s and things were changing fast. It was the straw that broke the back. The bottle was uncorked. They started organizing meetings, the tenant farmers of New York. They found the strength of numbers. They found the power of suggestion. They found each other asking the same question. Who gave you the right to be a landlord? To live up out the rent collection. They vowed they'd bring this madness to an end. And when one blew the tin horn of distress, he soon found he had 1,000 friends. With calico skirts, masks upon their faces, on horseback armed with knives and guns. They chanted and they yelled and they kept their farms, and they kept the sheriffs on the run. They asked, who gave you the right to be a landlord? To live a life of ease while others toil? Who gave you the right to be a rich man, while the rest of us pay you so we can work this soil? Governors, militias tried to stop them, but nothing could be done to break their will. And by 1848 the landlords buckled, sold their holdings to the farmers in the hills. Yes, they overthrew this feudal system, but it's replaced now by speculators and banks. And you can still hear the homeless families asking of all the landed gentry in our ranks, who gave you the right to be a landlord? To live a life of ease while others toil? Who gave you the right to be a rich man, while the rest of us pay you so we can work this soil? Who gave you the right to be a landlord? To live a life of ease while others toil? Who gave you the right to be a rich man, while the rest of us pay you so we can work this soil? Who gave you the right?
Short break. Good to see you again. Good to see you. Welcome. Glad to have him here. I'm Joe Porter, work at CMC. Most of you know me. A couple quick announcements before break. We have the coffee shop over here, which is a great addition. Please take advantage of it. And they have great teas as well. They're doing a Red Press brunch and coffee tasting this Sunday on November 24th. And next Monday's movie is Black Indians, American Story. It's about Native American and blacks uniting during periods of time in our early history. Kind of an untold story. It's narrated by James Earl Jones. That's our film for 7 p.m. So have a short break and come back and talk to each other. Stay here. Okay.
Neat smoking kiwi pot and chilling with the kiwi reds. But when I showed up at the airport to board my flight, I was handed somebody's cell phone. Suddenly the future didn't look so bright, and I entered the twilight zone. The woman on the line said, hello, I'm from immigration. You may have a ticket, but you can't go to our great island nation. I felt like I'd been hit in the face with a big old kiwi log. But then I felt the Stasi's cold embrace when she said, I've been reading your blog. The spies are reading my blog, the introduction and the prologue. And if that's so, it just might be true that they're watching this video too. Well, I normally don't get many views, a few hundred friends and kooks. So it comes as surprising news that some of them are kiwi spooks. I try to get my missives out and cause some small commotion. Someone's listening now, there's no doubt, across the South Pacific Ocean. The spies are reading my blog, the introduction, the prologue. And if that's so, it just might be true that they're watching this video too. Were you strip searched in Trondheim, she asked. What kinds of things do you smoke? Have you ever been charged with a crime? Are you rich or are you broke? Have you ever been turned away from any borders you tried to cross? What kind of venues did you plan to play? Do you use dental floss? I said, it seems a bit unusual for you to do things quite this way. I asked her, is this normal? But she wouldn't say. She'd just repeat her message. At Narita you shall remain. I've read your blog, each vile passage, and you may not board that plane. The spies are reading my blog, the introduction and the prologue. And if that's so, it just might be true that they're watching this video too. They're watching this video too. they fracking in Florida? Or do you not have gas here? Huh? Yeah? There's an oil boom, prairies are on fire, shale gas, all the fuel you might desire coming out so fast. No time to lay pipeline, Eurekaville, it's like the days of '49, except this time we're using massive rigs that poison everything more thoroughly. The deeper that it digs, trains a mile long, loaded up in rail cars, send them west, send them east, past cafes, schools, late night bars. There's an oil train coming through your town. There were dangers, they knew this from the start, but they were minimal. They said everyone must play their part and risk the destruction of their cities. Each time a train rolls by, hope it won't derail and detonate sky high. There's an accident each day somewhere, but we're not supposed to fear that it could happen here. Listen closely. Do you hear the whistle blow? Look out the window. Do you see the fire glow? There's an oil train coming through your town. It was after midnight on a Saturday night. A resident called in that a rail car was alight with that much gas. Sitting by the lake, it was no one's job to watch the car that maintained the brake on 73 massive tanks of fracking gas down the hill, gaining speed as they rolled past. Now at the music cafe that once was on Roof Frontenac, there are 50 customers and employees who won't be coming back. There's an oil train coming through your town. There's an oil train coming through your town. I don't remember. I should start making set lists when I'm this out of it, I think. But I'll do a song about the most militant left-wing canine in all of Greece. Lots of folks are revolting. They've had enough of this shit. The rich are getting richer. They're saying that's it. But with Luke it's different, that's clear. As he emerges from the fog, let's hear it for Lucanicos, the riot dog. It's a fight between people, but he is no pawn. He knows exactly which side he's on. In the machine of capital, he is no cog. Let's hear it for the Lucanicos, the riot dog. When a smoke bomb comes towards him, he kicks it back at the fuzz. He acts a bit different than a normal dog does. He's got a fan page on Facebook, but he's got no time for a blog. Let's hear it for Lucanicos, the riot dog. Let's hear it for Lucanicos, the riot dog. So, I was listening to a beat on BBC one day driving around, and it was on the anniversary of the boat lift of Danish Jews to Sweden in 1943, and a lot of people have heard this story about how and usually the story goes something like you know, the heroic Danish resistance organized the getting the Jews out of Denmark to Sweden, where they were welcomed with open arms by the progressive Swedish government, and you know, something like that's the big, and you know, and of course the brave heroic fishermen and regular Danish society all banded together and helped the Jews get to Sweden selflessly, and there's a lot of truth to a lot of that, but the reality is a bit murkier, and because for one thing, reading up on it, I discovered that you know, growing up, I learned about Niels Bohr, you know, along with Einstein and Marie Curie and other people, these really prominent scientists, right? Niels Bohr he's one of the most famous Danes ever, you know, along with Christian Andersen and stuff. And Niels Bohr was a physicist, and he was Danish, and he was Jewish, you know, and of Jewish lineage. And he, when the Jews were all getting, well, when this Nazi party member who was a sympathizer with the Danes basically tipped off the Danish government that they were going to be arresting all the Jews, Niels Bohr went to Sweden, and as soon as he got to Sweden, the Swedish government said, "We have a plane waiting for you from the United States. They want to take you there immediately to work on the Manhattan Project." And he said, "I'm not going until the Swedish government announces on the radio that all Jews are welcome in Sweden," which they hadn't gotten around to doing until then. And coincidentally or not, the next day the Swedish government announced on the radio that Jews were welcome in Sweden if they could get to Sweden. And so then the boat lift began. And on BBC they were interviewing a guy, an old man who was a young man, maybe a child, when the boat lift happened, and he mentioned something I hadn't heard before. It was that in current dollars, the fisherman who took him and his family to Sweden charged $50,000 for a 1-hour boat ride. And so, you know, in modern terms, if we were in, you know, modern America or modern Australia or one of these places where they don't like refugees, they like to call them victims of human trafficking. And so the Danish Jews were victims of human trafficking, and the fishermen were human traffickers in modern language. Where'd that go? My mother's parents came here on a boat. They came from a land of kings and queens, but on the wrong side of the moat. My father's parents came here on one too. They didn't want to leave Austria, but it was a thing for Jews to do. I don't know your story, but I'll bet it's more or less the same. What kind of war or famine was on when your family came before? Their ship arrived. Did your folks come here to discover and explore, or were they refugees running war did they cross the freezing mountains to make it to the sea, all the while wishing that they never had to flee, where they marched across the jungles with chains around their feet, nearly dying of exhaustion in the desert heat, before their ship arrived. Did they make a life here, or were they kidnapped and detained, held for years in limbo as their optimism waned? Were they turned down for asylum and told they shouldn't lie, then sent off to be tortured, sent back home to die? Did they get to move here, create their lives anew, or are they held on Christmas Island, asking what on earth they can do before their ship arrived? Before their ship arrived. What other songs have I written? Oh yeah, let's do that. We almost started another war there, but Russia intervened, and it's of course entirely coincidental that the countries that the U.S. always like to make war with are ones that have protectionist economies. It's okay if you're European to have a protectionist economy, but nobody else is allowed to do that. There's an uncivil war in Syria, 100,000 dead, millions of refugees without a roof over their heads, proxy armies flowing into a country open wide. You got Al-Qaeda and America fighting side by side. You got Saudi monarchs and French socialists on one team. You got Russia and Iran backing the regime. You got the Arab League having another meaningless debate, saying let's just see what happens if we wait. But now the West says gloves are off, it's all become too real. Now Cameron and Obama are dictating the deal. Now red lines have been crossed. Now it's time to act. Now it's time to have a few million tons of impact. Now it's time to do the thing the West does best. Time to step in the hornet's nest. We don't know who did it, but there's been a war crime, so we'll bomb an Arab country one more time. What we know is this: there was a chemical attack, kind of like the ones that happened in Iraq, like the white phosphorus we used on the people of Fallujah, or the chemicals we sold to Saddam for Halabja. But this time it's a different story, this poison gas in Ghouta. Our allies would never do this, those foreign fighters in Al-Qaeda. We don't know who did it, but there's been a war crime, so we'll bomb an Arab country one more time. We don't know who did it, but we know who is to blame. The Baathists are the party, Bashar Assad is the name. We don't know who did it, we can figure that out later. Meanwhile, we'll turn Damascus into a smart bomb crater. We'll fix them with cruise missiles like in Baghdad and Mosul, where they now have peace, prosperity, and democratic rule. We don't know who did it, but there's been a war crime, so we'll bomb an Arab country one more time. We don't know who did it, but there's been a war crime, so we'll bomb an Arab country one more time. They got the Palestinians have just walked out of the peace talks. Those Palestinians are always walking out on peace talks. I just don't understand it. Church bells are ringing. Families are wearing their Sunday best. Choirs are singing. Red sun is setting in the west. A soldier is yelling. Standing tall, checkpoint is closing. Outside a giant wall, it's Christmas Eve. In Bethlehem, tourists are coming. Birthplace of Jesus, called to port. Now they are leaving. They say you should keep it short. Shop floors are empty. There's no one there. Checkpoint is closing. To Manger Square, it's Christmas Eve. In Bethlehem, those Christians who stay here dream of sprouting wings, but they stubbornly stay near their long lost kings, relatives stranded far away. They have been branded terrorists. That's what the colonists say. It's Christmas Eve. Bethlehem, it's Christmas Eve. In Bethlehem, in Bethlehem, in Bethlehem. Do a song that is almost on National Public Radio. NPR did another piece on fracking today. It was pretty good. Talking about all these communities around the country that are banning fracking. And so they were interviewing various frackers who were saying, yes, we realize we need to clean up our act a little bit. Or else, of course they were making it sound like they wanted to do that out of the goodness of their hearts, not that they were worried about getting banned. But about I don't know, a year ago, NPR was doing another 3-minute piece on fracking, and I got a call from a producer at NPR asking if I minded if they used this song in their piece on fracking, and of course I said I did not mind at all. But then they ended up having a little excerpt from Gasland, which is a wonderful documentary, in the thing, and so then they said they couldn't have me too because that would be too biased. That's the last I ever heard from NPR. I had a knock one morning. Man was standing at my door. He said, "Hello, I'm from Halliburton. Have you heard of us before? We'd like to lease your backyard to drill for natural gas. It's called hydraulic fracturing, and it is the very pass for a clean energy future above the Marcellus Stone. Plus, we'll give you lots of money and a free mobile phone." I said, "You are a corporate crook. I don't believe the things you tell me. You could drive right off my property and then go straight to hell. No fracking way, no fracking corporate salesmen, whatever they may say. No fracking way, no fracking way, no fracking way. My neighbor was out of work and things were looking grim, so when the fracking guy came knocking, he had better luck with him. The company said, don't worry, everything will just be fine, so just sign your name right here, sir, on this dotted line. Pretty soon the water was tasting pretty dire. One day I lit a match and the water caught on fire. I thought about a lawsuit, then stumbled upon the fact that fracking is exempted from the Clean Water Act. No fracking way, no fracking way. This is how democracy works here in the USA. No fracking way, no fracking way, no fracking way. As if the situation weren't sufficiently unattractive, we tested the water and found it was radioactive. Now my property is worthless and there's a tumor in my brain. Half of my neighbors are sick, the rest are just in pain. Maybe I should take the money, move off to live somewhere, but all the places I look at, they're fracking there. Our choices now are simple: lose that which we hold dear, or communicate the message in a way that's unstoppably clear. No fracking way, no fracking way. Tell these frackers to frack off, both tomorrow and today. No fracking way, no fracking way, no fracking way, no fracking way, no fracking way. My name is John Riley, I'll have your ear only a while. I left my dear home in Ireland, it was death, starvation, or exile. When I got to America, it was my duty to go, enter the army and slog across Texas to join in the war against Mexico. And it was there in the pueblos and hillsides that I saw the mistake I had made. Part of a conquering army with the morals of a bayonet blade. And there amidst all these poor dying Catholics, screaming children, the burning stench of it all, myself and 200 Irishmen decided to rise to the call. From Dublin City to San Diego, we witnessed freedom denied, so we formed the St. Patrick Battalion and we fought on the Mexican side. We formed the St. Patrick Battalion and we fought on the Mexican side. We marched beneath the green flag of St. Patrick, emblazoned with Erin Gobra, right with the harp and the shamrock and the rattan just 50 years after Wolf Tone, 5,000 miles away, the gangs call us a legion of strangers, and they can talk as they may. But from Dublin City to San Diego, we witnessed freedom denied, so we formed the St. Patrick Battalion and we fought on the Mexican side. We formed the St. Patrick Battalion and we fought on the Mexican side. We fought them in Matamoros, where their volunteers were raping the nuns. In Monterrey and Cerro Gordo, we fought on as Ireland's sons. We were the red-headed fighters for freedom amidst these brown-skinned women and men. Side by side we fought against tyranny, and I dare say we'd do it again. From Dublin City to San Diego, we witnessed freedom denied, so we formed the St. Patrick Battalion and we fought on the Mexican side. We formed the St. Patrick Battalion and we fought on the Mexican side. died on that hillside at the service of the Mexican state. So far from our occupied homeland, we were heroes and victims of fate. From Dublin City to San Diego, we witnessed freedom denied. So we formed the St. Patrick Battalion and we fought on the Mexican side. From Dublin City to San Diego, we witnessed freedom denied. So we formed the St. Patrick Battalion and we fought on the Mexican side. We formed the St. Patrick Battalion and we fought on the Mexican side. Of course, you know, the last war before the U.S. Launched an unprovoked attack on Mexico and annexed most of it. 30 years before that or so, the U.S. decided to attack its northern neighbor, but it did not go so well. Since even way back then, the Canadians did not want to be Americans. I mean, in the sense that we use the term. They are Americans in the other sense, but. And I was staying with a wonderful guy named Tommy Sands in the north of Ireland, who is a wonderful songwriter and has long been an activist around reconciliation and peace and stuff like that there. And his what he does a lot of these days is sort of trying to make it. He's trying to tell the Protestants that it's okay for them to be Irish and it's okay for them to play music, because they've been told for hundreds of years that they're not allowed to play music and not allowed to be Irish, even though they have grown up there and been there for generations there. And they're constantly told they're British, except they've never lived in Britain and they don't know what that means. And so all they have, you know, so their whole identity is basically a flag. And, you know, a flag is not much of a cultural identity, really. And so, you know, Tommy, being from the majority Catholic, you know, community in Ireland, who actually thinks of themselves as Irish because they're Irish, you know, he figures that the Protestants are getting the raw end of the deal. I mean, they got more money and they got the flag, but they don't have any culture. And so, you know, he tells them, you know, you can play music, it's okay. You know, you can, you know, you can just ignore all this stuff about, you know, not being Irish and just be Irish since you're Irish. And so, you know, he gets asked to do strange things, and so he lives in a town that was named after a very wealthy settler family from Britain that was given all the land there. You know, the British Empire has a long history of giving away land that's not theirs. And so there's one guy, General Robert Ross, who was the most famous member of the Ross family, after which the town of Ross Trevor was named. And so the town council there asked Tommy if he would write a song for General Robert Ross, for whom there is a large phallic monument in the town. And so he gave that some thought and just couldn't get his head around the whole thing of trying to write a song about this guy. But I had actually been thinking about writing a song about General Robert Ross for some time, despite his contradictions. And because he did achieve one very impressive thing in his life, and I thought that was, you know, that was worth writing a song about. Robert Ross was from Ross Trevor. He was born in County Down. His family was given land there by the British Crown. He was a man born of the gentry, born with wealth and fame, but he joined the British Army to serve his queen and make his name. In the Napoleonic Wars, he fought in many lands, in Holland and in Spain, and the far-off Egyptian sands. He was wounded there in battle, came back to fight another day, and he was sent off to attack the USA. York had been sacked and burned by invading Yankee men, but the Canadians regrouped, chased the Yankees home, and then the British Navy made its way to the shores of D.C. town, where General Ross burned the White House down. The year was 1814, the U.S. was in retreat. It was a Canadian victory, an American defeat. Without the French to help them, they got their ass whipped by the Crown when General Ross burned the White House down. The place had just been constructed only 12 years before, but it had to be rebuilt soon after this disastrous war. The president turned tail and ran like a raggedy clown when General Ross burned the White House down. He was killed a few months later. Irish rebels stopped him in his tracks. He was buried in Nova Scotia, in the town of Halifax. He might have been forgotten, but he'll forever be renowned. He's the man who burned the White House down. He's the man who burned the White House down. And he burned down the Congress and the Supreme Court on the same day. But before burning down the White House, he ate the president's breakfast. Because the president and his staff had to leave really quickly, and they left their breakfast behind, so couldn't let that go to waste. So, my memory is not all that good for times and places in my own life, but I believe the last time I was here was during the Republican National Convention, and that was incredibly surreal. Not only did we have like typically outrageously hot Florida August weather and a hurricane, but or whatever, a level 4 tropical storm. What I guess it didn't quite make it to hurricane or something, but it was raining a lot and it was very windy, and there were a lot of cops, and we were all getting wet together, which was kind of nice, And at any given time, there were never more than 300 protesters, but and never less than 5,000 cops. It was really bizarre. And I was, and like of the 300 protesters, literally half of them were from New York City, because Occupy Wall Street has 2 buses that they rent with because they got a lot of money over a lot of donations, and they have to do something with all that money. So what they have been doing is just renting large buses and they go up to Zuccotti Park and they say, okay, who wants to go to Florida to protest, and pack a couple of buses, and then they drive down to Florida. They've been doing that, which is good. So you had like 150 Occupy Wall Street people from New York City, and then you had 150 other people from various places, including Florida, a few, and a whole bunch from California and Illinois. That at least among the ones I talked to, and there we all were, getting rained on and surrounded by riot cops. And of course, downtown Tampa, all the businesses, they've been told, there's going to be more business because the RNC was in town, which is like hilarious. Of course, you knew that there were going to be so many cops that no tourists or anybody else was going to be there, So it was just cops, and cops don't eat sushi; they eat donuts. So the donut shops probably did well. I mean, the sushi place I was in was just like me and June Bustamante. That was it. That was it. But I got to hang out with June a lot, and we played a lot of music together, and we recorded an album together a few months later, and so that for me it was great. And this is a really roundabout way of introducing this next song, which is, well, it's the title track of the album I made with June and Alejandro Arenas from St. Pete, both fantastic musicians, but it was also a song that I thought of to write when I was hanging out with one of these like young people from Occupy Wall Street who had only just very recently gotten involved with activism, like a few months before probably. And he was just kind of like trying to put things together and like wondering, why are there only 300 of us? Why are there so many cops? And you know, are the cops afraid of us? Is it just because Occupy Wall Street came down here, or you know? And so I thought, you know, actually this does go a bit further back than 2011, and I thought I could probably explain this in 3 minutes. And first, you have to have a problem. That part isn't hard. The second step is everybody realizing they're like you. They're holding the same card. Step 3 is finding there's a tactic when everyone believes it could be true. That if all the people work collectively, there just might be something we can do, and everything can change. So quick. And TV sets will try hard to make sure it isn't so. You don't have a problem. And if you do, it's not the same problem. And if it is, well, there's just nowhere you can go. But it's happened many times. The history is rich, though we easily forget how a meme can take hold and grab you, how it can spread out like a net, and everything can change. So they'll say we are lost, or we're dreaming, or they'll make a dream for us. They'll try to come up with a good story about why we belong at the back of the bus, about why we belong in this position, about how we don't know what we meant, about how there most certainly isn't any such thing as the 99%, but everything can change. So quick. Everything can change. So quick. I will do one more song, and thank you all so much for coming, and thanks so much to Rob and the CMC and Joe and everybody else for existing and bringing me back to Gainesville. And if you know anybody in Sarasota or that thereabouts, I'll be there tomorrow night. And you can, if you get on my email list, you'll hear about the next time I'm in Florida, and that's the most reliable way, probably. And if you want to help me get to the next protest, then you can go to davidrovics.com and become a subscriber. And I won't explain what that is, except it involves getting lots of CDs in the mail and getting a laminated card that gets you into all my shows for free, which is, you can impress your friends with that. So you can, you know, think about it if you're employed. And do a song that was originally written as a poem in French on the battle lines of the barricades, 1871, Paris, which is just as relevant now as ever. Arise, ye workers, from your slumbers. Arise, ye prisoners of want. For reasons and revolt now thunders, and at last ends the age of Kant. Away with all your superstitions, servile masses. Arise, arise. We'll end henceforth the old traditions, spurn the dust to win the prize. Also, comrades, come rally, and a last fight let us face. The Internationale unites the human race. Also, comrades, come rally, and a last fight let us face. reaction. On tyrants only will make war. The soldiers too will take strike action. They'll break ranks, they'll fight no more. And if these cannibals keep trying to sacrifice us to their pride, they soon shall hear the bullets flying. We'll shoot the generals on our own side. Also, comrades, come rally, and the last fight let us face. The International against the human race. Also, comrades, come rally, and the last fight let us face. The International against the human race. No savior from on high delivers. No faith have we in prince or peer. Our own right hand of chains must shiver. Chains of hatred, greed, and fear. Ere the thieves will up with their booty and give you all a happier lot. Each at the forge must do their duty and strike when the iron is hot. Also, comrades, come rally, and the last fight let us face.